Hey y'all, if you're looking for faith journaling ideas and inspiration, you've come to the right place. I have got a velvet stamping technique to show you in my process video today that I think you're going to love. I'm Melissa from pinkpaperpeppermints.com, and here we go. Hey y'all, it's Melissa, and I'm super excited to be finally bringing you this process video. You'll have to bear with me a little bit because I lost my voice last week. I had a cold all week and was in bed and couldn't talk, and I just got my voice back yesterday, so if I sound a little weird, that's why. I'm working in my beloved Traveler's Notebook insert, which you can find in my shop. Just head over to pinkpaperpeppermints.com and click on shop and you'll see it. And what I like to do when I first start is just try out my layers. So I started with a doily, and I've got some tulle, which is a little hard to see because it's see-through, but I've got some tickets and some different papers, and I'm just trying to figure out what I want in my layers. I like to try and have 7 to 10 layers when I do a layer stack like this. And then on top I'm using a journaling card from my collection. And that's also in the beloved Traveler's Notebook collection that you'll see in my shop. So I'm cutting some tulle here. I like to get this, I got this one I think at Michael's, and I actually got it it was the after Christmas sale. So it comes in a big roll and it can be really expensive, but if you wait for the holiday sales, they usually have certain colors for that holiday and you can get it 70 to 90% off. Here I've got some gorgeous vintage trim from my very sweet friend Deborah on Instagram. She's at Sparkling Faith. And what I'm going to do now is a really fun technique. It's a velvet stamping. So I take some velvet fabric and I'm just going to cut a square that's about the size of my stamp. Here it's a little corner filigree stamp. And I wanted to show you, when you look at your stamp, make sure that it's real rubber. It's a real red rubber stamp on a wooden mount. The cheap stamps that are like $1 or at the Dollar Tree or at Michael's, was one of those. I should say was one of those, because those are made from plastic, and as you can see on my beautiful velvet here, they will melt your stamp, ruin your stamp, and ruin your velvet. So make sure you check and make sure you have the right stamp. So what I'm doing is just pressing my velvet, and then I'm put it velvet side down on the stamp, and I'm going to rub my iron over it just for 15 to 20 seconds. And it's going to impress that stamp on your velvet, and it looks really pretty in the light, as you can see here. And so I'm going to do that. I've done 4 of those so that I can do them on my 4 corners of my journaling card, and I'm just cutting out my velvet right now. And here, this is a scrap of paper left over from cutting out my journaling cards. I always give a pattern paper in my journaling card kits, and so in this kit is some red gingham, and I had cut the journaling cards off, and I had that little strip of scrap left over, and I thought that would be cute in my layer stack. And what you saw me doing with my scissors there is just kind of scraping the edges to give it some texture. And I'm just sewing my little silk flower and some of my vintage trim onto my journal card. And you can see that there. I love stitching things. I love the texture and the added depth that it gives to my layers. And so I'm still playing with my layers, adding some more. That is some beautiful vintage lace from my friend Deborah as well. Adding that to my stack and checking my little velvet corners. And then I'm going to go in and sew some more on my stacks. I generally sew my stacks because I just love the texture of it. I love the threads. I'm using a variegated polyester thread there. Those are so pretty in your journal when they're all hanging out. And glue is messy and I don't like it as much. But I do glue things, but if I can, I sew my stacks. So what I'm doing here is, this was actually a scrap that I had tested out some spray ink, some Dilution spray inks on a piece of graph paper, and with a little heart, piece of heart-shaped cardstock. And then I thought it would be a cute tip out or tip in, however you want to say that, into my journal. And so I'm just trimming it so it fits the page. And I have these vintage labels that I got at an estate sale. They're not super sticky, but I thought I could sew them to my little tip in and create a pocket for some ephemera that I have. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sew it just on 3 sides with a zigzag stitch using that same variegated thread. And so then I decided, I need some pom-pom trim on this page too. I think I've got some mini pom-pom trim, and so I'm adding that to the page there. So I'm looking at it. I'm going to trim my pom-pom trim off, and you'll see when I put it down that I realize that I've actually sewn the pocket upside down. Trimming that pom-pom trim off just to make sure it looks good. I'm moving my strings out of the way because I don't want my strings to get trimmed. And I'm like, what did I do? And I lay it back down. Oh yeah, upside down, everything's gonna fall out. So, plan B. And I decide that I'm gonna sew it at the top of the graph paper, and that way my tip-in will tip up instead of out, and my goodies won't fall out of the pocket. So that's what I decide to do there. I'm kind of gathering up some of the ephemera that I wanted to tuck in there, just some personal mementos for my journal, and then I'm just writing "He loves me" over and over again. That just, I don't know, those lines on the labels just look like I needed to write that. So then I decide I would like a little bit of doily and tulle, sparkly tulle in the corner on my right page so that it can balance out my left page where the doily and the tulle are. And now I'm going ahead and sewing my stack to my journal page. And I've mentioned this before, I like to keep my journals not sewn together at first so that I can take them out to the sewing machine. This is a box of onion skin typewriter paper, vintage onion skin typewriter paper that I found at an estate sale, and I was super excited to find it. I'm sure I'm going to be hoarding it for quite some time, but I decided it would be really fun to put it in my journal with some scriptures typed on my Royal typewriter, and that's what I'm doing here. The one mistake that I made was I didn't really measure the page. I just kind of eyeballed it and drew a line, and you'll see when I take it out that didn't quite work. So make sure you always measure. I left some spaces because my original idea was to sew some strips of ribbon or paper in those gaps that I created in the journaling. But then, as you'll see, I'm trimming it up and laying it down and thinking, oh yeah, that's not going to work, too big. And I keep trimming hoping that it'll work, but no way, it's not going to work. So I come up with another thing to do. I decided to trim out each section and use my sewing machine to stitch it down in kind of a waterfall page effect. And so that's what I did there, and I really like the texture that gives too. And that completes my page. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was fun. Let me know if I went too slow or too fast, if I had needed to give you more details. I'm just learning how to do this, so I really want to do a good job for you. If you like what you saw, you can always head to my shop, pinkpaperpeppermints.com, and pick up some printables there and do an insert just like this. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a day filled with peace and grace, and I'll see you next time here on Pink Paper Peppermints.